Haidala Isis, Kalkajad Hinudihad Kilgakayang. I'm Erin Brillin, and I'm from the Haida and Cree Nations. Together with my husband, Andy Everson, we have dedicated ourselves to the revitalization and preservation of our cultures. But as each month passes, our communities along the coast lose precious elders. Every time an Indigenous elder passes, gone with them is a lifetime of wisdom that is lost to the coming generations. The Next Ancestors podcast features Indigenous elders and cultural knowledge keepers who have amassed a wealth of knowledge to share with us all. Indigenous wisdom is needed now more than ever to help us navigate in these uncertain times. And through this podcast series, each episode will serve to preserve this valuable wisdom to share with the world before it's too late. We're really excited today to have Maxine Matilpi. She's a fluent Kwak speaker and an amazing regalia maker. And we're going to ask her a lot of questions about all of her experience. Thanks for being here, Maxine.
I'm very honored to be here and that you've asked me to be a part of what I do. So, which translates into stubborn people or growling bear. That's from my father. And then from my mother, she was called Wadidi, but her original name was Wadzidi. And she was the oldest daughter of my grandfather, Chief Ujis Talis of the Potlatches. So I come from a line of both hereditary chiefs. My mother's side, Potlatches means angry people or stubborn people. And this is me. So I'm very honored that I come from a lineage of teachers and knowledge keepers and that. And as a young child, I'm the 7th out of 13. So I come from a large family. And the reason why we became a large family, my mother, of course, wanted daughters. 9 brothers altogether.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So us girls were a few years apart. So we really didn't have much in common. So me being the 7th child, I think my mother seen the artistic of the sewing part when I was 5 years old.
Really, that young?
Yeah, 5 years old. I was. I remember having these pants, and I always had short legs, and I was trying to figure out how can I shorten this. So I found
5 years old.
5 years old.
My goodness.
Trying to figure that out.
Wow.
So I found a razor blade that belonged to my dad, and I took it out of the ones that you used to open to shave.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting underneath the table, and I started to take the hemline off to figure out how to sew it. So my grandfather came in, Grandfather Gilidi, and he asked me what I was doing. And I said, I'm shortening my pants because they're too long. And he said, you better be careful with that blade because if you get cut, it'll really make you bleed. And that kind of scared me, but I still had to figure it out because, well, I started it, I got to finish it.
Yeah.
Right? So I remember sitting underneath the table, taking the hemline down and then sewing it. And I remember my mother was really impressed with that because she thought somebody did it for me.
Yeah.
And no, I did it by myself.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think my mother seen that in me as a young child. So we leave Turner Island because we were made to. They shut the school down, the medical boat, residential school became strong. A lot of our relatives were being brought into St. Mike's. My father was a residential school survivor.
Do you remember what year you left Turner Island?
63, 64.
And did everyone leave at around that time?
There was families that started leaving one by one, but we ended up in Alert Bay. Yeah, I was going on to 7 when my mother started to bring me and had no idea what was going to be happening. Get to Chamaga's place and her English name was Dorothy Hawkins from Kingham. And then Margaret Glendale, I called her Gran, and her name was Margaret Cook. Margaret Cook from the Flowitches, and she had already been living in Alert Bay. So my mom and her were really tight. So that's where we started to go on a Sunday to start to teach me with Ngatola Gila. So when I started with them, I had no idea what the agenda was. So they had me sorting out the buttons. I was their threader.
Oh, wow.
And I was their cutter.
Already?
Yeah.
At 7? Holy cow.
So I was guided by each one, once the amount of buttons that they wanted for that day, then I would be, they got me to do different things while we were all together for that afternoon.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we would go there probably 10 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes we would stay there till 8 o'clock at night.
Oh, wow.
2 o'clock, we would not naturally have lunch, but 2 o'clock would come, and they would let me be a kid for half an hour, go out and play.
Yeah.
Then that was really nice. But the beauty of all of this, I wish we captured those moments. If we had a camera.
Yeah.
That I could take the pictures, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to show that today of how this all started with Ngatola Gila.
No kidding.
So what it made me think about was, I thought about my granny growing up in the longhouse as well, Lagadzumga. She was a very big knowledge keeper. She knew names and would translate the names. It didn't matter which family went to her. And she would remember the songs that belonged to the family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so what a gift, what a memory that she had. And, we all have a gift of what we contribute to keep our culture alive. And I always say, this is mine. This is what I was taught. And I'm going to go back to being 5. I just thought of this. I remember my mother saying to me, "Kistas labit ginanov." You're not going to be a kid forever. Your hands are always going to be busy because you're a girl.
Yeah.
You're going to be cooking, you're going to be sewing, you're going to get married, then you're going to have children. And when she said, "You're going to have a tlaonam," I never looked at tlaonam like my dad being her husband. I was like, what's that? Like, ew, like, me, her voice, her saying that to me and having her hands up like that to me. You're not going to be a kid forever.
Real mentorship, though.
Yeah.
Like, I've always known you were a very renowned regalia maker, but I had no idea you started so young. Like, that's amazing.
I think it really is. I think that embroidery.
Oh.
And I didn't know that she kept a couple of my pieces when I was really young.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't see it until after she was gone.
Oh, wow.
And that, when I seen it, oh my God,
Did you remember it?
Oh yeah, I remember it.
Oh my God.
I remember the mistakes I made on it, and she would make me take it apart until it was done.
Properly.
Yeah, it was the OCD
Real
in her,
perfectionist.
and she passed it on to me. She really
It's
did.
kind of a blessing and a curse, hey?
It really was. My mother was always creative. She was always making things, always, because that's what she grew up with. So, learning how to Ngatola Gila, it made me think of who taught my granny.
Yeah.
Was it her grandmother? Was it her aunts?
Do you know? No.
No. But what I know, the baby blanket that I have of my mother's, she said her great aunt had made it for her when they did the Hitlugula back then.
Wow.
So the blanket that I have of hers is over 100 years old now. Wow. Yeah. So I use that as my template when I make baby blankets for our family who do Hitlugula. And I
That's so powerful.
And I let my family know, this is from your great aunt's blanket.
Wow.
The measurement. And it has so much more meaning because it was from our family.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm self-taught when it comes to regalia, and there wasn't anyone in my family who'd done it before us because we lost all of our regalia, like going back to the 1800s.
Yeah.
So when I started making regalia, I didn't have anyone to teach me. So when I hear about your stories, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that's so amazing. Can you think of any sort of traditional teachings that you were taught around regalia making?
The language. Everything was taught in Kwak because my mother had a strict rule in our house. You know, she said, "Lagi los nikakla, because Mama like elos lachagug, kisens hagayotli." Why do you think you could speak that language in my house? Because that's not who we are.
Yeah.
So we weren't allowed to speak English in the house because my mother didn't speak the language.
So all of your siblings were speaking
All the way
all the way
up
through?
to the ninth. But the last two youngest brothers, they could understand it, but they didn't speak it as much as we did. Everything that I do with our language and Gatola and even backroom work, that all stems from my mother because she worked the backroom a lot. Yeah, and I remember working with her at a very young age and just watched her and listened and the calmness that she had in the backroom. And I find that we call it hiccups whenever something does come up in the back room. And I don't realize how calm I can be too in the back room. And that was a lesson that she taught me without saying, just be calm in the back room, don't worry about things. You know, she didn't sit me down and tell me that. It was just watching her and listening to her. So all my life with what we do to keep everything alive, she was my biggest teacher. And so was my grandmother, you know. She didn't speak any English either. And she always said, you always give from the heart. And I really like to share that because she said it over and over. Nothing can go wrong. And I really think, you know, you don't realize the lessons that you get from your elders in your family until they're gone, and how valuable those words are until you start sharing it. That's where that comes from. And I don't realize how much I learned from my granny without her sitting me down and saying, new settlements, you know, I'm going to tell you things, I'm going to tell you history and all of that. She didn't say any of that. And it was just by listening to her. And I think a lot of, like even my daughter's generation and even my granddaughter's generation, that needs to be awakened for that generation to listen more. Because the potlatches that I've been involved in, you know, we're not supposed to ask for things when things are being brought up in your family for a potlatch. You never demand. You know, when my parents had their potlatch, well, I want this, that's because it's high ranking. Everything that's in your treasure box is ranking. It's how you acquire it. You know, just because your wolf might be down here, that doesn't mean it's any less than like Ominoa, right? You don't ask for things when your family is potlatching. You don't demand. When my parents had a potlatch, they just said, oh, Bobby's still the hamach, Margaret, you're the healigest, Charlie, you're the mamaka. You know, our parents just told us what we were going to have. We didn't say, no, I don't want that one, I want something better, you know? And that's what I hear now. So that's really sad, so our parents really need to step up and correct those mistakes and not be afraid to use their voice to their child.
We really went over this with some of the other chiefs too, about clarifying issues around those types of prerogatives and how it really does just come down to the chief and the matriarchs to decide who gets what, and there shouldn't be any fuss about it otherwise. Right? If your elders are choosing that, then you go with it.
And what I love to see is it's not just your immediate family that's involved in when your family's having a potlatch. They expand it by inviting other relatives in your treasure box to show that family connection. And you don't see that too much. I don't see it too much because they want to make sure that their family members get something. But who says that it all has to be done on the first potlatch? Right? When you don't, hutlila, our people fought really hard for us to keep going where we are today. Whether we had that potlatch band or not, they still went underground to keep it alive. My grandfather, Galidi, went underground, and I'm very proud that he did that to keep that alive and to pass on names and dances.
Yeah,
you
so
know.
important.
And what I really find interesting with my great uncle, Cletus, Jack Peters from the Danakdok, to name some of our relatives from Tsachis, just so that they would know their connection through their grandmother from the Danakdok.
Yeah.
You know, and
Remember those things.
Yeah, and it wasn't done in the longhouse. They did it in the kitchen. They did it in the front room of their house, just so that their kids would be recognized and have a name.
Yeah.
Our people didn't always have it done in the longhouse, as long as the baby or the child was named. But the biggest pride is that you're allowing your child to be named without it being in the longhouse too.
Yeah.
As long as it comes from the Gilgamer, that's what matters to me, and that it's legit. So as we get older, you know, I never ever thought that I would be in this position now as being called an elder.
You have very young, vibrant energy about you.
like my dad. My dad was very young that way too. But
I was telling June how you just amazed me how much energy you had, and I was thinking she's still recovering from a heart attack, but you were just keeping up with a big group of us. So yeah,
on
I'm
that
so
trip.
impressed.
Yeah.
You have so much energy.
Diet has a lot to play with that, and genealogy.
Yeah.
You know, when my doctor asked me about my genealogy, and they said, yeah, that came from our mother's side. So while I was in the hospital with this, before they really found out what the hell was going on, I told them about the genealogy laying there, and I said, thank you, Mom. I really appreciate your gift. And I could hear her, oh, you smart aleck kid. I could just see her look at me.
That's a good way to reframe it, though, right? Instead of being like, damn you.
Yeah, Mom, did I ask for this? Yeah, you know, life is really interesting after having a scare like that, another near-death experience for me. You know, life has become more valuable.
It's really clear that you still have so much more to give, and your presence has been such a gift to so many people. I mean, the amount of help that you provided with our potlatch was just incredible. I'll always be grateful for you for that.
You know, for that, I thank my mother and my grandmother and my father for that knowledge, and that I accepted that gift to be able to do that. You know, you have to want to do it, not because you have to. You want to do it.
But I mean, how many people have been trained since such a young age to do that? I mean, that alone is pretty rare.
Yeah.
You're very lucky to have that just from the get-go, to be able to see everything and how it works. And
yeah, before I could even write my own name.
Oh, wow.
I was already learning from her.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I mean. I think my mother seen that gift in me to be able to work with my hands, and also telling me that these will never be rested because of me being born a girl, that these hands were always going to be busy. I thank her for a lot of things. And when I work in my studio, I get lost in time down there. I already have it in my head of what I want, what my creation to look like. So I'll stand there and I'll say, Ad, Hikaslan, Lisa Lagachan. You know, I talk to my granny. Tell me what I should do here.
Oh.
And then bang, vision will come.
Wow.
Yeah, and I always find that when I talk to my granny, when I'm stuck, things happen.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I really believe in talking to your ancestors, and they answer you because they know where you are.
Yeah.
And they want you to continue. And I know that Ada would want me to continue.
Totally.
Yeah.
You've developed your own style too. I mean, when I see all the tunics that you've outfitted so many chiefs, right?
Yeah.
I think you've made, I don't even know how
I
many
don't
tunics
even know
you've
how
made.
much I made either.
Yeah,
truthfully.
but you've developed this really bold and stunning style. Like, you've influenced my regalia making, because whenever I sit down to make something, And because I don't have the family history of being able to draw from these things, I kind of take pictures and I look at all these things, get inspiration, and then try to create something completely unique. But how did you come upon your style? Like, do you feel that it was a blend of traditional and some contemporary creativity?
I'm going to go back to my granny. My granny was a regalia maker all the time because of all the grandchildren that she had.
Oh, she made it all for all the kids?
Yeah, she made it. She made it for most of us.
Lucky.
And my grandfather potlatched until he died. Oh. You know, after he passed away, my grandmother didn't sew as much because her heart was really broken. Aww. But he designed for her.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he designed for her. So with what I have done, when we started to create for my mom's memorial, there was 10 of us left, so I wanted to make that 10 sets that we had planned on doing together. So it expanded from there. Word got out, we had 25 sets made by then.
What year was that around?
89?
Oh, yeah.
89 but I had made some in 84. Yeah, I started in 84 with regalia making. And so that's how long I've been doing it steady.
Have you ever done classes?
I've done quite a few classes where I've been hired from the Kwak in Guilford Island. I've gone to Kinkham a few times in Guilford. I've gone to Fort Rupert, American Natural History in New York. I've done a workshop there.
Oh, wow.
And I've done different displays like in Belgium and different parts of Germany to do a blanket making demonstration where I would send like maybe 10 sets and it would be hung in the gallery wherever they put me, and I would invite a different artist each time I went over, and it would be 10 days. It really broadened my horizons more by looking at regalia from my granny, from my mom, and having that visualization, thinking of what were my granny's thoughts of how to put it together with the technology we have today, because she would be amazed. And I know my granny, hey, when it was something really amazing for her, she would do this really fast.
That's such a good granny thing.
Typical granny make, eh? Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it was really, she was really cute that way, but she was really quiet. Or like, how old was she when she was taught? You know, being in the longhouse, and what kind of fabric did they have? Yeah. They didn't have that heat and bond compared to what we have today. Yeah. And all of that. And everything was, you know, by hand unless they had that hand cranked. And that must have been difficult because I've tried that when I started to sew, because my granny had one. And I would watch her like, how does she do it? You know, keeping her stuff and then turning that herself. You know, she could have like eight of us in her house. And we'd be running around, and she never ever said, kids, go play out. She just let us do it. Yeah. She just let us be kids. And every once in a while I would go and see what she was doing. I realized that until later on in life, how quiet she was too, just really a gentle soul. But every time I create, I think of my granny. You know, like when I get stuck, when my vision changes, and you know, when I ask her for direction, and she'll show me what needs to be put on. That's
a really good advice. Do you have any other advice for people who might be embarking on making regalia for the first time and that don't have the same kind of teachers and that available?
To buy the right fabric. That's one of the big cries for our people, is not knowing what fabric to buy.
What do you recommend?
And, you know, the lightweight Melton.
Yeah, or, not the really thick blanket weight.
Yeah, or anything thick, because you still have their design and you still have the buttons to put on. Yeah. And to have the right fabric even for your border. You know, I give a lot of direction of where to go and get those fabrics.
Do you ever use ultra suede?
If you buy the real ultra suede, it's beautiful to work with. It's like cutting butter.
Yeah, because it doesn't fray too, right?
It doesn't fray. It doesn't fray. If I can, but the thing with the ultra suede, it has a tendency to get way dirtier unless you Scotch guard it. And I Scotch guard my stuff. If I have done ultra suede, I will spray it twice.
And the color selection has gone down so much since the 90s. Like, it's hard to get good colors in ultra suede now.
And now, like what you said,
Can't find it.
because of the cost.
When you're cutting into expensive fabrics.
Ooh, yeah. I don't use scissor. I use the rollerblade.
Yeah,
it's so much.
No kidding.
It's more efficient.
Do you have all sizes of them?
I use
so
the
helpful.
60, and I use the X-Acto blade number 11 for cutting up the design. Then it's accurate for me.
Yeah.
So I work with a lot of templates that John has made, and I have various sizes. Like when I did work for Pauline's Potlatch, all those vests that you see, the yellow and the black, that was my contribution to the family for their potlatch.
Wow.
And so
What a gift.
there was 30-something vests, and that ended up to be like 3 bolts of yellow. And it took a few months to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And he always said, we're setting the bar. We're setting the bar up here.
You really did.
And that because,
Really?
because, people that want to learn and the families that didn't have regalia,
Yeah.
I shared that because
Totally, yeah.
it doesn't belong to me. I had this one elder say to me, "You're so generous with the sharing of your designs." And I said, "It doesn't belong to me, it belongs to our people."
Aw.
So, when...
That's not that common, though. There's some people who get real stingy with that kind of stuff.
Oh, you tell me. I know.
So your generosity is notable.
Yeah, that's where a lot of our people need to be.
Yeah.
A lot of our people need to have an open heart,
Yeah.
because if we're going to keep our culture alive, that's part of it.
Yeah. It takes all of us.
That's part of it, yeah, to make things happen, make it work.
Yeah. Leading up to the potlatch is like a full-time job, just trying to outfit everybody in my family.
Yeah, I hear you.
And Marlo, she's gotten really good at doing applique, and she's made like carver's tunic, and she's really picked up on the sewing really quick.
Yeah.
She's really been good at sewing since she was a kid too, so at least I can call on her to help a little bit. But even my hands get so sore, like from doing different parts of the regalia making. My hands
I know
just
for
get
me
achy.
with cutting out the applique, this is the one that suffers the most.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it gets...
Because you use the blade?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Use the blade. I don't use any size of the roller blade to cut out. I use the X-Acto blade because I can get right into the points.
Oh, yeah.
And so I trained myself to use that after I got carpal tunnel from scissors.
Oh.
Whenever I do teach that, I try to encourage them to use the X-Acto blade. But some of them refuse to try, and they use the scissors, but you can see the cutout that it's not even.
Yeah, you can't get a good clean line with scissors, especially around curves and.
And when they got it in their hand or on their lap, and then it's just crooked. Yeah, some people are willing to learn, and there's others that I'm afraid. It's really intimidating for a lot of the women that I've worked with.
It really is, I know.
Yeah.
I find it interesting because I've done a few workshops too, and I used to do workshops for parents at Head Start. I would have to hire sewers to do the sewing machine part for a lot of them because they were just too intimidated by the sewing machine. So they didn't mind doing the cutting out and laying it out and stuff. But when it came to actually sewing, there's some people that were just like not willing to learn the skill, which is funny because, like I was in the era where we had to take sewing, right? Like it was part of junior high. We had to take it. Everybody took it in grade 8. So, and it's not hard. I mean, the best part about sewing is you can take it apart so easily and just redo it. And it takes no time at all.
Yeah, fix it.
Anything can be fixed.
Yeah. Right now, I'm working on repairs, even though I have other things to do. And it really bothered me because there was a tear in one of my blankets, like, oh, now I've got to patch it. Because I love this design, and John cut this out for me. So it's very sentimental for me. So I looked at the second blanket, and there was buttons missing from it, like, okay. So I added the buttons. I go to bed, and I see a tear up here, right around the smoke hole area. Like, I can patch that. It's probably going to rip again. Like, So I got up and I took the whole thing apart.
Oh my goodness.
Because when I looked at it, they're going to say, "Nah, this can't be Maxine's work." So I took it apart.
Just a little bit of a perfectionist.
Yeah, just a little bit. Like, I looked at it and I said, "Did I really do that?" Even I criticized
It would
how
haunt
awful.
your sleep if you left it.
It did. It haunted me for 2 nights before I finally took it apart.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it took me a few hours just to take the whole thing apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a bit about your role. You talked a little bit about the backroom work, and it's such an incredibly important role that never gets the credit that it's due. I don't think. I think that the work of coordinating the backroom is one of the most important jobs that goes on
To make it flow.
Yeah. Can you just explain to people who aren't familiar, like in Haida Gwaii, for example, we don't have a backroom.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really illuminating when you have somebody coordinating the back room. Like, explain to people who might not be familiar with what goes on, what you do back there.
Well, for one, once we know what the program is all about, and it's really important for me to sit in the chief's meeting, then that way I hear who's the Hamacha, who's the Healy guest tech, and the rest of the program of what they have.
All of the initiates.
With all of that. So I always ask, when I am hired to run the back room, can it be my decision of who I want to work with?
Yeah.
And the reason why I've done that, Shannon and I, we really work hard at making the list for the singers, the Hamachas of who they want, and to try and get all of their Bakomatla names and the list of the chiefs along with their names. And it takes a lot of coordination, and it takes a lot of time to put those together, because when the speaker is ready, then we hand it over to him. We make a list, we follow all the deaths so that we read them out so that nobody is forgotten. So that's part of what we do, or what we want to do to simplify it for the family. So once we have the program, then, well, who's bringing the hamsmala?
Yeah, who has all the regalia.
So we know, like, John Macro will have that set, Jonathan Henderson's got whistles, so I don't have to bring mine.
So you coordinate even bringing all the stuff that the family needs in?
What happens a lot, all the artists who are artists themselves with their own regalia will bring it.
Yeah.
But they'll ask, what do you need?
Yeah.
What do you need?
That's good.
So that's really important. So, like, say they hire Wayne to be the lead for the Hamacha, and that's really helpful. When Wayne does that, then he decides who he wants to work with in the back room for the floor. We try and encourage the people who are going to contribute for the potlatch by bringing their masks, if the families don't have it, bring it in the night before, so that we try and put it in the order of the program, so that we know it's in the back, and we do inventory.
Yeah.
Inventory is such a must.
You keep this like one big list of all the, and who
everything
brought
that comes out, so when we're ready to pack, then we know what goes back to the family. And the simplest thing that what's happening now, besides writing it down, is photographing it, so there's no discrepancy. Our responsibility is to make that program go, and what other people have brought for the potlatch, and that's why my regalia has become so much, because it's so much easier rather than going to 4 different families to borrow blankets.
So you have amassed a whole collection of how many blankets now?
At one time, I started giving out to family. I wanted my siblings to have theirs.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, my siblings and my goddaughters to have theirs, their own stuff, or make it for them, and that. But I think at one time I might have had 120 blankets.
Whoa.
Yeah. I didn't know that until I did the count. Like,
where did you keep them all? Like, that must have been a massive amount.
Oh, that's why I have a lot of totes.
Yeah.
A lot of totes. So
you lightened your load a bit. That's good.
Yeah, but I still have more to put borders on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
But what happened, when my granny passed away, I wanted 99 blankets to honor her.
Oh, wow.
because I learned a lot from her.
Yeah.
And all of that. So I'm asked to run somebody else's potlatch, right? Oh, man. I went past 100.
Oh.
And I had to do it twice because I couldn't believe I had 112 blankets on the floor.
That
at
is
the time.
incredible.
I couldn't believe it
I don't know
myself.
anybody who's made that many.
Yeah, yeah. And so when I told John how much we had, so, are we making blankets for the village?
The whole village.
The whole village. I think I have that many relatives on one side.
No kidding.
Yeah, so that's when I decided, after John passed away, to start handing them out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any tips and tricks for dressing people, making sure their stuff doesn't fly off in the middle of a dance?
Part of that is having the proper safety pins.
Oh yeah.
I don't like using ties. I tried that with some of mine by having ties because it would just speed things up, like what you use for a chilkat. Mm. It's different from a chilkat to a button blanket.
Yeah.
Well, I did that with mine. Mm-hmm. While I'm out there giving it, and then it lands right here. So I have to keep pulling it down. So I had to take that off. It worked for oil, but the hole just got bigger and bigger.
Yeah, just over time get stretched out.
Yeah, then after a while, I ended up just using pins. Mm-hmm. So safety pins is what I use a lot. I don't like using those long ones unless you sharpen them because it really shreds the material. Oh. Yeah, but what I'm talking about, I call them little pillowcases, and I sew it onto the border from
on
behind.
the inside.
Yeah, so that it holds it. Like I did one not just before I came up here because her blanket was so heavy. She didn't realize by using abalone and Akoya until she went to Hobier, and she said, "Oh my God, I had 4 safety pins and it kept popping."
Oh.
So we got it fixed. Yeah.
So it supports the pin, so the pin's not going to be tugging on it so much.
Yeah, it gives it more body and more safety. We get together the morning of the potlatch. We do have a circle. We really do have a circle. Mm-hmm. And we have a prayer, and then I delegate. Shannon, you're the one that's looking after the program. Mm-hmm. And if something comes up on the program, you're dealing with the MC. Mm-hmm. And the family. So that who's on the aprons and who's on the blankets and who's the collars. Yeah. So I like to have at least 2 collars so that they're separate. Yeah. And I have little books of who they're going to call so that they don't go around twice to look for the names, right?
Well, that's effective.
Yeah.
I always thought like you only have to send out people who really know who's who. You really got to know who's who. Yeah. Because if you miss somebody, then it's really awful.
It is awful because I've been called on it, like, why wasn't I called? And they said I wasn't on the floor. Yeah. What I was taught when I was young, when you know your tribe is coming up,
just
you
come
shouldn't
up.
have to be called.
Yeah. Yeah, so for people who don't know, because this is obviously, it's specifically with Kwak potlatches, when you call the different tribes out to do their ladies dance or what have you, somebody has to come out to the floor and say, okay, it's your turn now, like your dance is next. So they're coming out to pull people into the back to get dressed so that they can be ready for when their tribe comes out.
So when we do that, we try to have a dance in between them.
Oh, so it's not such a rush.
Yeah. It's still a rush because we don't know how many we're going to call at once too.
Yeah, because I mean, there could be just lots, hey?
Where we've had to separate one group of 30.
Oh,
and then we had to go.
Many.
Yeah, and then we had to let the MC know and the singers know you're going to sing Guatsla. The next group is Nakwartok.
Mm-hmm. Split them up because it's too big if you put them together. Yeah.
So when we have these hiccups, that's when we have another little circle. How are we going to fix this so that the family isn't upset because they don't know what's going on, but we do. Yeah. Those are the things that we have to really pay attention to.
Yeah, so for people who don't understand, there's consequences for when things go wrong in the potlatch, right? So those things you have to be on them really carefully.
Very carefully, and how you dress. So I have a specific way of how the aprons are tied on.
Okay.
I have absolutely no knots whatsoever because.
Oh, really? You have a certain way of tying them?
Yeah, when we tie, you go around twice. and then make the bow. Because when you do the second wrap around twice, then it doesn't move. So I prefer that method, because when we have those tribe by tribe, and when somebody has done a knot, oh, that pisses me off.
Yeah, because then it takes you forever to get it off, and you're waiting to dress someone else. I can't open knots at all. Like, I'm the worst at opening knots.
Yeah, that's why I like to have extra aprons.
Yeah.
So I think I have more aprons than I do blankets. Again.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So there's lots of rules that we try to have in the back room, and that to make it flow, because if we don't have rules, it becomes chaotic.
Yeah.
You know, if I don't delegate, you know, if we don't do that rotation of the calling, and that, because it is a lot of work to be out on the floor. And I really feel for the Hamatsa, because they're out there all day. Us girls, we can do the rotation. I like to have at least 8 of us in the back room when it's in the bay.
Yeah.
Because of
so
the
big.
flow that we have. So yeah, it's really important to have a really good group back there that's going to take direction. Direction is really huge for me, and the willingness to learn.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, is the willingness to learn.
Yeah.
But also not be in your face all the time.
Yeah.
That's another thing. When we get rolling, you know, I always tell them, just look at the program. That's our boss. That tells us what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, you don't need somebody coming at you. What now?
All
What
the
now?
time.
What
Yeah,
now?
like this.
Yeah. That'd be
I'm not a door.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. I delegate one person to deal with the kitchen. Find out when lunch is ready, when dinner's ready. Only one person.
Yeah.
And we always tell each other where we're going. Anywhere in the longhouse, I need to know where they are.
Yeah.
In case I need them, and then like I don't know where to look for them.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the glugoi, if they're going to bring anybody to the front, let the Hamatsas do it, and we'll talk with the Hamatsas. You don't need 8 of you back here, because we need someone to come from the front too.
Yeah.
So we have to work with the Hamatsas that way too. Hamatsas, that they need to learn how to rig, to be a part of that system.
They need to get proficient with that, so that you don't have to worry about that part of it.
Yeah, I really wish that we could have a workshop, you know, to be able to do all of that, so that everybody is more comfortable out there.
Yeah.
And not just learn on the job when you're a new initiate.
Yeah.
Right? I know it's intimidating with all the people, but you're not there to look at the people, you're there to do your job.
Yeah. Because I mean, you don't get practice, right? You're either thrown into it and you're just doing it on the fly.
Andy, you got shorts, you know? Because that's happened.
Yeah,
like, you got shorts, what? What?
He's always prepared. He always brings his gear.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember this one Potlatch too, was this Hamatsa showed up, and we needed somebody in this Humpsimill, all right? And we just said, oh, you're going. Oh, okay. And then, this was the funny part, takes his pants off, and Pee-wee, being Pee-wee, she starts laughing, because she had red underwear.
Oh, jeez. No shorts.
And I used to have spares with my stuff, and like,
oh, gee, you're
God,
that
no.
prepared?
Yeah.
You even have shorts? Jeez. Can these guys be more prepared?
So he got teased about it, and he said, gee, I hope Lisa doesn't fall out there. But those are some of the things that happen.
Yeah,
right?
totally. A lot of things happen on the fly, but there like isn't a minute to spare so many times back there, right? Like, it's just like,
yeah.
You really don't want to leave the audience waiting for too long, so it's just like one thing after another.
You know, when it's a really big program, I like to have 7 ready.
Yeah.
7 ready,
Wow.
and it really makes it proficient. I thought it was really interesting from one of the chiefs and the singer was, we didn't know all the songs that belonged to them, so we're at the log, what are we going to sing for this one, right? And it never dawned on me when that happens, when we're back to back like that. Like, I hope they're prepared for what song they might have to sing for this one, if they don't have the song from the family.
Right.
But really good communication back there, and to have fun too, when it's not always going to be serious all the time back there.
Oh, there's lots of laughter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You just got to make it work the best of your ability, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have any advice for people who are endeavoring to learn their language?
Listen to old tapes. Listen to old tapes. Listen to songs that you could find, you know, because some of our words are in there.
Just to get the sound of it?
Yeah, and ask how do you say it, you know? So
Yeah,
pronunciation
it's hard.
is really a must, because if I'm going to teach you and then you go and Kwak to Andy and then you say, who taught you that? Who's your teacher?
Yeah.
If the pronunciation isn't there.
So here's something that's a big challenge in that there's people who are learning who are never surrounded by full conversational language, right? So in your house, you grew up around conversational language. You know how it's supposed to sound.
Yeah.
It's like in you, right? On a deep level, it's in you. But when you have younger generations who've literally never heard conversational language, like it's just not been around them, then you can really see how the challenge in getting the pronunciation and cadence and emphasis and all that sort of parts that go along with the language could be missing, right?
Yeah, I think the easiest way, because we know there aren't many pieces out there to how to say things, but when it comes to music, you know, they can play that music and hear those words too, because that's a part of who we are. By listening to the words from the music. You know, that there's a lot more information than we did 30 years ago when it comes to language. Some people have the aptitude to read the language, but again, they can read it, but are they saying it right?
Yeah.
And that's always going to be a difficult one. And, you know, even with what we heard yesterday was, we don't talk like that, you know, when we were looking at some of the sentences. But that was a real challenge.
Right.
And I think it was written that way so that it made us who are speakers to figure out how we would say it.
Yeah. How would you say it? Yeah.
So, you know, if you don't ask, and that's what my father used to say, if you don't ask, you'll never know. So, and that's how a lot of people learn, is by asking. I get that phone call like, how do you say this? And I will say it over and over, and I say it slow for them so that they can get it.
And you were also saying yesterday that you have tapes of your grandparents?
Yeah,
Is
my
it
grandmother.
Your grandmother.
And I have Potlatch tapes that you know, when you listen to how the older, like my grandfather's generation, my great-grandfather's generation, of how they spoke, it was so clear and so slow too.
Oh, slow.
You know, a lot of our people don't speak fast, right? And that's what you call chahostal. You speak really fast. But with our people, it's so concise, it's so clear, you know. And what my dad taught me as a young kid, if I had a hard time with certain words, he would abbreviate it, you know, like
break it down.
Hua, la, you know.
Yeah.
And he would say it over and over until I could say it. So, and I find myself that when I've worked with anybody, and when they ask for certain words, I will say it like that. And because that's a lesson I learned from my dad.
Oh,
and then he would say, run with it, then la hua, right?
Yeah.
You know, with Christianity, a lot of our people pulled away from the Potlatch world, eh?
Yes.
But my mother said, that's a gift from our Creator to use. I like that analogy.
Totally.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
So we look at everything that we do as a gift to keep it alive.
You're really lucky that you have such a really amazing legacy, that you've come from people that really worked hard to keep it alive, and then you're doing the same thing. It's amazing.
Yeah, you know, I never ever thought I'd be there one day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't realize how fortunate I am to have spoken the language.
Yeah. Good for your mom being so strict about that, right?
Well, you don't get this all the time. So it wasn't for her strict rule, I probably wouldn't speak as much as I do today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thank her for that too.
Did your mom not go to residential school?
No, she never had no formal education. Her education was our culture. Yeah, being the oldest.
That's another fortunate thing too.
Some of her siblings went, but not her.
Wow.
Her lesson was our culture.
Thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us. I really appreciate it. It was an awesome interview and so much information.